Welcome to this week's piece. This is actually just a set of nightstands that I found. I loved the shape of them. When I initially saw them, I thought they were of a little better quality than they are just because of the age, but turns out they're not wood. They have like that, it's not even veneer that's going over them. It's like a very thin layer that goes over the top, and then that is painted. So there is a lot of composite work going on in this piece, which is fine. They're still fully functional and in relatively decent condition. The finish obviously is not. And there were quite a bit of scratches, not necessarily in the finish, but in like indentation scratches, because this isn't real wood. It's like a composite wood. So it's very easily dented. Anyways, so instead of sanding, I'm going to go in with my Scotch-Brite pad, and as I'm doing the cleaning, I'm using this pad because it's going to scrub everything up, but also help make the surface a little bit better for paint. So that's kind of what I do when I have something that I don't want to potentially sand through, is I'll use these Scotch-Brite pads, and they give it a little bit of tack without taking off too much, and you obviously aren't going to go through anything with this. But you can see that finish is just lifting off because these are so old that it's just, and I want to say they may have been in a smoker's home at some point. I don't think the last person who owned them smoked, but it just kind of had like that residual like nicotine-y feel on it. So that could have been the case, or it could just be that it was old and gunked up and that's how it is. But the coloring and the feel of it made me think that at some point in time it was in a smoker's home. They don't smell of smoke anymore. I think probably the previous owner had bleached them or done something to clean them off, but yeah, it's not pleasant looking. But anyway, so they're just going to get a really, really good cleaning, and the hardware too, you can see, was very dingy because just going over it with the Scotch-Brite pad has brought the brass back. I'm keeping this hardware because I love it. I think it is fabulous, and it goes great with like the little swoopties on the piece. So I'll just get those further cleaned up, and we're going to use them. Everything's going to be great. You can see that finish just coming right off with the Scotch-Brite pad. It's so weird. And because this is not wood and they're nightstands, which means they're going to be heavily used, I'm going to prime these. And the whole body, I'm just doing one coat of primer. This is my favorite primer. It's the Bullseye 123 primer. I always get the gray one. I don't bother with white. The gray is light enough to go with light colors and dark enough to go with the dark colors. So this is the only one that I purchase. I'm just going to roll it on, and then I'll use like a little sponge to get into all the details. One coat on the base of it because I'm not too worried about that part, but I'm going to do 2 coats on the top. Oh, and I've been wanting to do this thing where, like, if you were starting from scratch you've never done this before, using paint and supplies, like at the most inexpensive, because usually when you start, that's the route you take. So I was like, that would be kind of a fun thing to start doing, and then watch as things kind of build up as it goes. Obviously not right now. I'm just kind of practicing on things because I don't know how hectic things are going to get with the new baby in the next little bit, but I think it would be fun in the future to just watch a buildup of starting from nothing and kind of growing this thing. So I went to the dollar store, and I still get stuff at the dollar store like drop cloths and things like that, but I picked up this roller sponge, and it can be done. I'm using this is a Dollar Tree rolling sponge. It's working. However, it's like kind of offset and leaves an interesting pattern. So I can recommend it if you're brand new, just starting out, and you absolutely need a roller. But I would, if you're gonna just just get them at Home Depot because they're very inexpensive anyways. And I mean, even Amazon has good rollers, because this one's just, it's like flimsy at the end, which just cracked me up. But it worked. And that's kind of what you do. You do what you can with what you have, especially when you're just starting out. So, but I'm just trying a bunch of new things to see how they go for somebody who's like just barely starting out. And it can be done. I don't know that I would recommend using this roller, but you could. Because I did it with this piece. I wouldn't do the final paint finish, but doing primer with it, which is great because you're just going to toss it when you're done anyways. I mean, unless you want to clean it out and you have a decent roller, but I knew I was just going to toss this out. But it was kind of cool because with this kit, you got the tray, the roller handle, and you got 2 sponges. So it was a great value as far as what you're getting for the price. And I just used this little sponge to go in around all the areas to get the primer in, obviously where the roller wouldn't reach. So, I mean, it's good as far as that goes. Now, because I was keeping these for myself, that was my thoughts on this. I'm using this wallpaper because it is my favorite of all time. It's like fancy old lady, and I love it. It is on a chifforobe that I did, so I wanted to match that without being too matchy. It's only on the inside of the chifforobe. So just these little pops. I'm just doing the little inset panels with these. And it is a pain to do this because you're trying to make sure it fits inside the little inset. So tissue paper is a little bit easier because it kind of scrunches in and is thin and wants to bend for you. And wallpaper is much thicker and it does not. And this is pretty thick wallpaper. It's a wipeable surface and it has its own glue on the back. That's my favorite kind to work with. So because of that, it's a bit stiffer. It's also stronger, so I like that aspect of it too. So all I did is I cut out one piece. I got it as close as I could. And then I used that one too, since all the holes are very similar, all the little insets on the nightstands, they're very similar. So I just used the one piece. I cut them slightly larger than the original. And then I just put them in and fixed them and made them kind of fit better as I was going. So because they're not a huge sheet I'm trying to fit in every single time, it's much easier just to cut out kind of like the close cut out of it and then go in with a blade or scissors or what have you and trim it up to make sure it fits perfectly on each slot after that. Now to apply this, it's super easy. I'm just double checking to make sure this one fits into this spot. And you can either spray the back of this because again, it has its own glue. What I'm doing here is actually just brushing on the poly. I apply this with poly. It's a water-based sealer, whatever kind you have. So I'm putting it in the inset and then I will also brush some on the back and that will help soften it a little bit. Again, you can use water on the back because it will activate the glue, but the poly also activates the glue and I feel like it's just a little extra sticky and I don't want these to come out ever. And they're going to be safe anyways because they are on an inset, so they're not something that's going to have like a corner lifting, but there you go, a little bit of water. And so now I can just stick it in there, get it lined up as good as possible, and then I just use my fingers and rub out all the bubbles. And as the glue activates, it gets thicker and it makes it really easy to work everything out. And this is sturdy, so I'm not worried about it tearing or anything like that. I can just get it in, line it up, and then start pressing everything out. And then If you have a really, really sharp blade, very, very sharp, you can cut off any excess that you have while it's still wet if you're careful. If you don't have a very sharp blade, just wait till it dries and you're gonna cut it off then. But then you're also gonna have to like peel it up because it has the glue on the back and then the poly, so it's gonna be stuck on there. So it is easier to get the whole piece off while it's wet, but harder in that you might rip or tear a part of it. So you can wait till it's dry, but if it's dry, you'll then have to work to get off the excess bits because those are of course like essentially glued down. And then for the colors of the nightstand, again, I want this to kind of match my other piece, but not be matchy-matchy. So I'm starting with white. I'm going to do a 3-color blend here. And the top is going to be white because I like my tops a little bit lighter. I feel like it isn't as heavy as if you do something dark on top. And then that is going to fade into a steely blue, which will then fade into Iron Gate, which is a darker gray. So I'm doing the top first because the top will get probably more coats because it is a solid color, and white I typically like to do a little bit of extra just because it's the most used surface. And I'm just going to brush it on. I don't care so much about brush strokes or the perfect placement right now because this is the first coat and you can always change it after the first coat. Now, I don't want these to be perfectly smooth. That's not my style. If you want a pristine finish, you can do 2 to 3 coats and you can sand between each layer, but I like texture in things, and so you kind of just choose how you want your finish to end up being. So in this case, it's just going on, getting on the white on the top. I want that to be relatively smooth, obviously, but it's not pristine by any means. And then I will fade it down, but again, this is the first coat, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm lucky with these drawers because they don't touch around the outside edge, so it was fine to paint them and push them back in. And then when I get up to 2 coats, I'll leave them out to dry that way, but there was no rubbing or anything on these drawers, so that was kind of great. And you can see I'm doing the swirling motion to get my colors blended out. It's just I'm putting on the white, and then I'm adding the blue, and then I will use my spray bottle and do the swirling blends to get everything blended in. And I'll start from the top down to the middle, and then I take the steely blue, bring it up to the middle, and then I will start blending from there. That way the top color is crisp and the bottom color is crisp, but the center is where it's getting blended out at. I've got tons of blending videos, so I don't want to bore you. And then I kind of do some dry brushing in between. I did 2 coats of that. You have to keep that in mind just to get everything exactly where I want it. And then I'm going in with the metallic gold paint, and I'm using a sponge to apply it to the stamps. Now, these stamps are the same ones that I used on my shiver robe, only I did them in white. And so I'm putting these along the sides. They kind of have like the same floral feel as the inset panels, but now they get to be a little bit bougier because they're gold. And I just place them wherever I want. There's no rhyme or reason. I just want to fill up space and get these on here. And because gold has like that metallic, and it's not a very strong gold, sometimes you can see it really bright and shiny, and sometimes it's just like a muted background thing, and I love that. And I love that especially for the sides because the sides aren't the most prominent part of the piece. So again, I just take this, put the paint on, and I will do sometimes 1 stamp, sometimes 2 without reloading it. And it gives it kind of the lived in look where you've got a really strong inked out portion and then you have like a softer inked out portion. You just have to be careful where you're placing them because you don't want it to look really strong just in one area and then really weak in one area, unless you're doing a fade or something like that. Now the very bottom, because it's broken up with that little trim edge there, I thought it would be perfect for some striping, and you guys know I love gilded stripes. They're one of my most favorite things ever. So I'm just starting out. I kind of start with the middle piece, get it on there, and then tape out from there to make sure that they're as even as I can get. I'm not a huge fan of measuring, so I'm an eyeballer. And then I'm using the sponge brush to put this on because I don't want brush strokes in it. So I'm applying it with the sponge, and then you'll watch me go back and I'm kind of like patting, dabbing it with that so it gets that texture. Again, you'll have like some harsher spots and some more mellower spots in there, and it doesn't look perfectly cohesive. That's what I want because it looks older that way. And then you can see it's kind of textured there, and that softens out too as it dries. And now for kind of the pain part, but still mildly relaxing, is I just take a detail brush and I'm going in with the gold and hitting all of these high points to make those stand out because I want all of those gold. If you wanted a bit more of a rustic look, you could do like gilding wax and just use your finger, and it will be not as pristine as this. But even this will have highs and lows because I'm only doing one coat. If you were to do 2 coats, it would be super strong and clean and crisp, but I want this again to look older, so I'm doing only 1 coat of it, so it looks like part of it has worn off in certain areas. And then in other spots where they aren't super pronounced, like you can see obviously there's lines with the little leaf and everything sticking out, but on part of the trim and everything, I didn't want it to be as strong gold, so I did a dry brushing technique on those areas. So this got like the small detail brush in concentration, and then in the bigger areas where I didn't want them fully gold, I just did dry brush of gold. Then I'm just going to seal this up with some poly. I do 2 coats on the top of this. The body, I only did 1 coat, but then once this fully dries up, I'm going to be adding wax to the top as well because they're nightstands and I want them to have extra protection. Now to finish out the hardware, because the brass wasn't quite the color that I needed them to be a bit more gold, I just went ahead and sprayed them. Oh hi, Taryn here with Elegant Upgrades, and we've got our finished pieces. There will be pictures to follow. It's so hard for me to move out of the way right now. So these were, I've mentioned before that I have 2 nightstands in our bedroom, obviously, and they've never been refinished. They're hideous. They're like that orangey wood, but they're great, good sized nightstands. So I've just been on the lookout. Rarely do I do stuff for myself. It's typically just to put on the website and move along. But so more recently, since we're trying to move and get out, I'm like, it would be nice if we had like a matching bedroom set when we finally moved. Matching, you know? And so these ones I found, I loved just the little bits of like subtle ornateness that they have. They're not perfect. So when I originally picked them up, they're Stanley's, so they're a good brand. However, when I finally got them back to the shop and looked over them, the tops are not wood, and they have that real thin layer of, again, not veneer, it's like a stickery type thing. And I was kind of bummed about that. But I just did extra primer on the top, and then I did primer on the back to soak it in so that there wouldn't be any issues, because obviously we have kids and they like to set things on nightstands that don't belong there. So I just wanted to make sure they were extra protected. And then once these set up fully, because they're not quite all the way done yet, I will then do a layer of wax on top. You guys know that on pieces that get used a ton or that have a lot of surface use or abuse, I will do my top coat, and then after that I will also do wax, just to give it that extra protection. And then of course we use coasters and things like that, but sometimes kids don't. Anyways, so I designed these based off of, if you guys remember the old chifforobe that I did, that I'd been looking for forever, I wanted to make these not match, but you know, kind of go together with those. These are very girly. I do feel a little bit bad for my husband, but it's fine. Anyways, the chifforobe has this on the inside, and then on the outside, because I left it wood toned, but I did a wash, and then I did the floral stamps around it, but I did the stamps white. So these have the gold stamp, so it's a little bit bougier than that one, but it still goes and still has gold, and these are just right up my alley, and I love them. I love them so much. And they have the stripes, which you guys know, I don't know, there's just something about gilded stripes that makes me happy. So I wanted them to be a little bit, I'm gonna say grungy, that's not quite the word, but they're imperfect. So I hand did all of this stuff. I didn't want it to be pristine, so I didn't do 2 coats. I wanted to look lived in, because again, we have kids and things are going to get messed up. So anyways, I'm going to list these, which sounds counterproductive from what I'm doing. However, we still haven't moved yet. So I'm going to list them high, and then if they don't sell, that's great. I've taken them with me and we will use these ones. If they sell quickly, that's fine too. But my plan is to list them high, they won't sell, and then I will just swap these out for our nightstands now, and then I will redo our nightstands here and then sell those. This was a lot, I'm sorry. Anyways, so these are the finished ones. I will get pictures, you guys will see always, I have pictures at the end. But I hope you like these. I think they're so pretty. They're just, and surprisingly easy to do, not difficult at all, because the blend isn't perfection. It's kind of that like swirly blend that I really like, and it's good stuff. So thank you for following along. I hope you were inspired at least a little bit to use any of these techniques, and I'll see you guys next time.